Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Tom Kelly. This is Clean Cut Audio, and this week I'm going to give my opinion on a question I see asked a lot in Facebook groups, in forums, in Reddit, and in my email inbox and all that stuff. Do you EQ before or after compression? Again, opinions, people. But anyway, let's do it. For those of you that aren't aware, I'm currently working on a pretty long multi-episode series on frequency and the science of sound on my podcast at cleancutaudio.com/podcast. So if you're not quite sure what I mean when we're talking about equalization and frequency ranges and bands, you might want to listen to that first. But for the rest of you, welcome. We're going to do a pretty brief and I think pretty interesting video on equalizing and compressing and signal chains, yada yada. And if you haven't seen my videos on compression, I'll drop a few in the description for this episode. You can check them out there since this is kind of building on some of those principles. But a quick recap of equalization. What are we doing? We're basically adjusting the loudness of certain frequencies. So for example, I'm going to boost to quite a bit of 250 hertz right now so you can hear what that sounds like. And then we're going to put that back to 0 and I'm going to cut a lot of 4K so we can hear what it sounds like without that frequency range. That is equalizing. We're just adjusting the loudness on certain frequency ranges, and that's really it. So why do we equalize in audio and more specifically podcasting? That's a loaded question, but I think that we should be equalizing in podcasting not for effect, but just for clarity. I'm not trying to make my voice sound any different than it usually is. I'm trying to just clear up maybe some of the muddy frequencies, take down some of the really, really high airy frequencies that can become fatiguing on the ears. I'm trying to make my voice sound as natural as possible rather than trying to enhance it. And that means in my equalization process in podcasting, I'm typically cutting frequencies. It's a subtractive method of EQ that is usually encouraged among all areas of equalization. Start with subtractive. If we look in Pro Tools here, I've got a screen full of plugins and we can see a couple things. First of all, this is the EQ curve that I usually roll with for my podcast and my videos. This is what you're probably going to hear on this video here. Got some dynamic EQ working, so it's only going to equalize this range when it really needs to. We have my equalizer going into Vocal Rider, then going into an optical LA2A compressor, and then going into the API 2500 compressor. Let's actually listen to a quick before and after of with and without EQ on my voice. I'm not making big moves here. I'm adding half a decibel around 700 hertz. I'm cutting 1.16 decibels. I'm not doing much because I'm trying to get as good of a recording as possible so we don't need to be fixing it later. But this is before equalization. I feel like the vibe of this entire song is that Eric Andre meme where he shoots Hannibal and he's like, who killed Hannibal? Like, and after. I feel like the vibe of this entire song is that Eric Andre meme where he shoots Hannibal and he's like, who killed Hannibal? Like, So all I'm really doing in my equalization is clearing up some of that muddiness to really focus in on the low end that I like, which is, closer to the fundamental frequency of my voice, 125, 130 hertz or so. But on the edges of that frequency range, there's a lot of kind of unpleasant stuff. So I'm just kind of getting rid of that. Again, a de-esser, carving out some high end, which is the air frequencies, not really much going on there. Andre meme where he shoots Hannibal and he's like, who killed Hannibal? Like, all right, so that's what my equalizer is doing. And the reason that this needs to be done, in my opinion, before compression is because we know that there's frequencies in my voice that we don't want. This whole lower end we don't want in my vocals. But if we bypass this equalizer, all the compressors are now going to react to those frequencies that we don't want there. So what is our option? If we equalize after compression, the compressor is working extra hard because there's more frequencies present. Some of the lower end stuff, which if you've listened to the podcast, there's quite a bit of power in those low end frequencies. So it's going to cause the compressor to do a bunch of work. And then if we're cutting those frequencies After compression, we now have a compressor that's reacting to frequencies that are no longer there. And that doesn't really make sense. So we want to cut the frequencies we don't like. So that kind of corrective EQ, focusing on clarity, we want to get rid of those and then compress. And then we can even EQ one more time after compression, because something that's not talked about enough in regards to compression is that it affects the color of your sound and the frequencies coming in and out of a compressor. So it might actually end up kind of undoing some of the high end that you liked, and it'll undo that high end even more if we leave those low frequencies in there. But after compression, it might be a good time to EQ again. So if we're going to be adding stuff back into the signal, or possibly even more subtractive EQ, it's not a bad idea to do it before and after compression. But again, all of this depends on whether or not you need it. There might be a signal that, it's rare, but there might be a signal that doesn't need EQ at all. It might just sound great. So I don't want to encourage you to do EQ before compression if it doesn't actually need it. So it all depends on the sound, but that's why I EQ before compressing, because I don't want my compressor reacting to sounds that are no longer going to exist. So get rid of them as soon as possible. And I'm going to have to do a video on do you do noise reduction before and after compressing, because I think there is a very clear right and wrong to that one. But we can do before and after if we want to, but if we're doing subtractive EQ, I recommend doing it before compression just to make that thing do less work and it'll sound more natural. So I hope that cleared some things up for you. Again, you're free to experiment with any of it. Something might sound better after compression. Who knows? It depends on too many things for me to really give you a clear answer, and that's typical of most things in audio. So please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss a video, because there will be lots more stuff like this. I'm going to tell you in every video that it depends. But through these videos, I'm hoping to give you not the answers, but the thought processes so that you can come to your own conclusions based on the audio that you have in front of you. So I'm really glad that you're here. Thanks for sticking around. Thank you again to my Patreon supporters. If you would like some bonus content and to help me along in this journey of educating the masses on audio for podcasting, please go to patreon.com/cleancutaudio and feel free to check out the mini tiers that I have available there. Thank you so much, and I'll see you later. Bye.